Hey guys, come over Outlander, Season 3, Episode 10, Heaven and Earth, and I was definitely looking forward to this episode. As you guys know, I've not been the hugest fan of the second half of the season. It's just really felt rushed to me. It's felt kind of random and unfocused, and last week I thought was a step in the right direction because it finally seemed like they had something of merit. They had something of a plot. They weren't just doing something random. And this episode, I will admit, was better. I think this was a better episode. It was a little more focused. It was a little bit more. It had actually a really nice conflict going on, but it is very predictable with what's going on here. There's a lot of things here that they're kind of for lack of a better term, dramatizing. They're making it seem like it's this huge deal when in reality it's not going to be. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, but let's just get into this episode because I definitely do want to talk about everything that went down here. Of course, in this episode, we are still on the boat and everything. And if you remember at the end of the last episode, Claire was basically forcibly taken by the disease infested buckets. And to start this episode, we get to see Jamie's reaction. I thought it was cool to see because most of this episode, we don't see Jamie a lot. We see mainly Claire interacting with these sailors, trying to cure them of the disease. And basically, he's still standing by the railing watching the British ship when Fergus arrives with a little bag of things from the cook. And he announced it's a makeshift potpourri for Marsley. Yes, I've been pronouncing her name wrong. I was informed last week that it was Marsley. It's not Marseille, it's Marsley. Still don't like the character. Still really not a fan of her. I think she very much is a Leary 2.0, but maybe that's going to change. It's just right now I'm not a fan of her, but since the cabins are beginning to be rather gamey, we can see that, he's trying to help her out. So as they're talking, Fergus noticed that the British ship dropped one of its sails, which is a signal for making way, and Jamie practically loses it on the spot there. So he runs to where the first mate is watching the proceedings. He snatches the telescope from him, and he sees Claire standing there. She's arguing with the captain on the deck of the British man of war, and he officially is freaking out because he's realizing that she really is in danger. I mean, there's so much disease on that one ship, and it's just not at all a good idea for her to be there. So he really is concerned. He starts shouting orders to make way, but Captain Rains stops those and gives orders of his own, and Jamie realized that based on those orders, the British ship is actually going to outpace them, and thus it's going to get away with Claire on board. So essentially, he's kind of out of luck. You can tell that he's doing what he can to try to get to her, but it's not really working out. So Captain Rains informs Jamie they'll meet up with them in Jamaica as per a notice from the other ship. Of course, he's not really necessarily satisfied by this. He grabs and pushes Captain Rains, and everything sort of happens at once. The ship's crew pull out weapons. Jamie's men are pulling out dirks. One of the ship's crew puts a loaded and cocked pistol right in Jamie's face. I mean, it's all kinds of intense, and it's one of the most intense scenes we've seen all season. Why? Because you actually feel that urgency. You feel the danger. Claire's not going to die, but you feel the danger because she is very much in danger here. And this is definitely a very dangerous situation she's gotten herself into, and it's just very tumultuous. So I thought it was definitely a really well done scene here. And Captain Rains calls a stand down. Jamie's taking the cells below. And back in another prison, Jamie takes one last look at the British ship as he forced below decks. You can see that he really wants to do something, but he just isn't able to. And I thought this was a very strong opening. It sets up what is actually a really well done episode, and I thought this was a very good way to start it out. So, like I said, most of this episode actually does focus on Claire and her sort of trying to help all these patients, and she's waging her own battle on the other ship. She's fighting disease naturally, but also male opinions. You can see that they really don't care about her, and again, Claire's very experienced with this kind of thing because of the time that she's had in the 60s, and she was in charge, and she's just, she's very much outnumbered in this sense. But basically, she's used to both situations, taking everything in stride. And that's something I really do love, is how strong Claire remains throughout this entire episode. But Captain Leonard has given her authority to do what she must, so any rumblings are quickly shut down and all her orders are followed. So basically, I like that. I like that he actually has given her authority here, because I really was not looking forward to an episode of just Claire being outnumbered and all of this sort of sexism going on. We've seen that throughout the season, and I really have been a fan of how they portrayed it. I thought it was good when it was in the 60s, but I was not looking forward to seeing it again here. But Claire's made everyone start dipping their hands in grog, and naturally the men don't understand it, about germs or how dangerous they are, obviously because, you know, the resources we had in the 60s were just not available then, obviously. So this is actually really well done. I like how anachronistically Claire is taking this, because obviously, you know, she's not from this time period. She knows a lot more about germs and things like that they don't. She knows about the polio virus. That was obviously very popular then. And you can tell she really does want to help them out. So basically, she puts measures in place to clean the ship, have men sanitize their hands, not even touch each other, even while sleeping. So several other men, modern and unknown, approaches the man, grumble at first, and Mr. Pound, Claire's constant helper, tells about a couple of men pressed in a service due to being convicted of making moonshine, basically. So they put those men work in a building so they can distill the grog into pure alcohol. And as Claire's provisions are implemented, things start to level off and gradually improve. So you see that she actually is helping here. The number of infected men are slowing down, eventually stops, and once infected, it's still possible that they may actually die. So you do get that sense that, you know, they might not all be completely cured. So she does only have primitive measures to fight the disease, obviously, because again, those resources that she had in the 60s, she does not have available to her right now. And you can see she really is determined, though. She wants to do whatever she can to save these men. And she looks back through the previous surgeon's book to determine where the outbreak began, and she rooted out that one man on the carpenter's crew was the zero patient, that being crewman Howard. He was the carrier, but he didn't come down with the illness directly. He just, you know, he clearly got it from someone else, but he probably was the root of this, you know, disease kind of spreading. So basically, we see that he was actually with the cook preparing food, and he's now the ship's typhoid Mary, and he hasn't. She naturally has him quarantined in the hold with no small argument from Cosworth, the cook, since he was the last helper that the cook had. So, I mean, obviously that was very smart. So back in the Artemis, Fergus takes food to Jamie. Jamie's back to seasickness, thanks to not being able to have the acupuncture treatments that prevents it. If you remember, Jamie is he's very seasick, and it's very easy for him to get seasick. And similar to Claire, he is very much all out in the open, and anything that could happen to him, he doesn't have the proper resources, and he's still out of his head with worry for Claire. And it's true she cannot get the disease, obviously, because again, we've already established that if you get this disease, you kind of die. So he obviously doesn't want that to happen to Claire, but Jamie doesn't have faith in the British to not allow other harm to, you know, befall her. He's very worried that this actually is going to affect her. So given that there are 300 plus men on board, he just simply cannot lose her again. And again, you know that Claire's not going to die. That's the only thing about this episode, is that while it is a well done scene, you know Claire's not going to die. You know she's going to get out of this, and that sense of worry is just not there throughout this episode. So Jamie starts hatching a plan to break out of the cell and take over the ship, mainly because he just wants to get to Claire. He wants to make sure she isn't harmed with, so Fergus tries to bring him to reason, but Jamie's not having any common sense here. He's really not thinking straight, and he accuses Fergus of not knowing what love really is, and thinks it was right for him to withhold his blessing to marry Marsley because he doesn't really love her. And that cuts Fergus to the quick, of course. He's been Jamie's man without question, and he tells Fergus if he truly loved a woman, he would be willing to move heaven on earth for her, risk arrest, death, even hell itself. And I did think this was a good scene. You know, Jamie telling him that, do you really feel this way about Marsley? Are you really willing to go to move heaven and earth for her? So Jamie says he would give Fergus his blessing if Fergus does what he asks. So I thought this I definitely liked. I wasn't all for, oh, Jamie's not going to give Fergus his blessing, but now I think it makes sense. He doesn't feel that these two are in love enough and that they actually have that connection that him and Claire have, and that actually makes a lot of sense given what Jamie and Claire have been through. So I thought that was definitely a good scene. But Claire then watches the British ship readies the bodies of the dead for burial at sea. They have a ceremony with Captain Leonard delivering a eulogy and the crew reciting the Lord's Prayer before sending the bodies overboard to a watery grave. And that night we see she's looking out over the sea when the cook wakes up. He's making these remarks about how many have died, and he clearly does not understand that illness really does take time to start. And that, again, that's understandable. They didn't know of that then. So basically, Claire never says a word in return to his remarks. He's really just kind of being obnoxious, and he arrives that this is happening and sends the cook away. And he asks how she handles the deaths and difficulties so easily, and she explains the concept of compartmentalizing things. And basically that they do what they have to do in the face of difficulties. They muse on how they hope this is the turning point in the battle of the disease, but he quickly compliments Claire on her hard work, and Claire then thinks it will take luck for them to save those who are left, and he pulls out a rabbit's foot that his mother gave to him, and it's the rabbit that Jamie actually saw on the Culloden battlefield, which is really interesting. It actually, I thought it was kind of cool the way they did that. This is kind of a recurring theme. There was also that bunny that Bree had in her crib, and now there's the lucky foot on the toxic ship. So I don't know what this whole rabbit symbolism is all about, but it clearly is a big part of this, and I don't know what that's really about, but one of the other crew members comes to get Claire and says Mistress Johansson's husband has fallen ill, so she heads down to where the couple tend the very urgently needed goats that provide the milk that's keeping the crew from dying of dehydration, and of course, they need these goats. This is their only sense of, liquid, and they obviously need it so they don't all get dehydrated, but due to the illness, she discovers he's not taken with the illness, but has drank himself an alcohol poisoning by drinking the pure alcohol needed for the sickness prevention. So to man's defense, people did not know, again, that pure alcohol for such reasons in that day. They didn't realize what was poisoned and what wasn't. So again, you can't really blame the men here because they're so not in the know about what was actually going on, and that what they're actually doing is actually very dangerous. Claire is in the know because she knows how this turns out. She knows what really is going to happen, and she warns them not to drink it. But obviously, she can't do that. You can tell she wants them to, but she just can't do that. She actually picks up the bottle of what the man drank, does her cursing outburst thing. She assures the wife that her husband will live, and thanks her for all her hard work with the goats, and she's leaving the goats' pen. She notices the flag of a ship that she and Jamie were told might have young Ian aboard, and obviously that still remains the main mission. The main mission is to get young Ian. As much as she does want to save these sailors, young Ian, rescuing him, that is still the mission. So we see that she goes to the captain's office to ask about, finds the room completely empty. She looks in the log to see if it lists anything about the other ship they encountered that was carrying that flag. She doesn't find anything about the other ship, but she does see a note about Jamie in the log, and there's a man on board who recognized Jamie and informed the captain he was wanted for sedition and murder, and obviously you can tell this might be her way out of this. So the cooks then enter to catch her standing at a desk. Claire tries to get around him and leave the room, and the man moves even closer to her, and she threatens to tell the captain he tried to violate her, reminds the cook that she has the captain's confidence because the captain does seem to trust her. So the cook lets her go from the room, but she's more shaken by the news she read than the cook's behavior. So Fergus and Marsley are talking in the cabin about Jamie's plan. Marsley brings up a very good point about if Fergus was captured, then no one would actually be around to protect her from the crew, and that is a good point. I mean, as much as I'm not liking Marsley, she does have a good point here. I mean, let's face it, these men are kind of savages, and any woman they go after, they're going to try to sexually assault, and they start kissing, but Fergus breaks it off. He says that they must wait for when they're married. He just doesn't feel it's a good idea, even though no one's able to watch them right now with Jamie in a cell and Claire on the other ship, and Marsley comments that he's just like Jamie in that once he gives his word, Fergus will never break it, and I would agree with that. So he steals one last kiss and leaves the cabin, and I do like the way that he's kind of influenced by Jamie here, and he has a lot of similarities to Jamie. It's just very well done, and César Domboy is doing such a good job in this role. So Claire's cleaning her tools when Elias comes in to inform her there were 4 new cases that very day, and the best scenes in this episode for me are between Claire and Elias. I thought their scenes were very strong here. He muses that he thought it would have stopped by then, and Claire sees an opportunity to locate the men who gave the captain the information about Jamie, so she has Elias hunt for him under the excuse that he's possibly a second carrier. So Fergus attempts to go steal the keys to the cell, being the pickpocket's always been. However, as he stands by Captain Rain's door, he overhears the captain and some of the men talking about all of them. So Jamie, him, Marsley, and Jamie's other men, they all mention not mind have a taste of Marsley, and Fergus then changes his mind and doesn't attempt to take the keys because he simply cannot risk leaving Marsley alone. If he and Jamie's other men are captured in the overthrow of the captain, he knows this is not a good situation. These men clearly want to violate Marsley, and They are not at all looking for her best interest, and he doesn't want to cause a situation. So Claire's still working on preventive measures when men bring in the man who knows who Jamie is, and that being Harry Tompkins. And the man just so happened to be the same man who broke into the print shop, fought with young Ian, and caused the shop to burn, which I thought was really interesting. I did like the way they connected that here. And Claire threatens to kill Tompkins, but he says that he would thank her for it after his difficulties over the past month. He explains they found the dead men in the cask of creme de menthe, and they pin that on Jamie. So it turns out that they're actually the ones who knew about this. The young captain might retain the vessel if he could turn over a wanted criminal. So she has Elias placed in the same cell with Typhoid Howard, and she returns to check on Miss Johansson's husband. He's better, and Mrs. Johansson gives Claire some goat cheese to thank her for helping her husband. She doesn't speak English well, but as Claire tells her she's worried for her husband when they arrive in Jamaica, Mrs. Johansson then alludes to a plan for her to escape, that this is her way to get out of this, and she says she's happy to help when the goats need grass, and she can't explain what she means, so Claire's really not clear with what she's really saying here. So obviously, it's kind of up in the air what she's really talking about, but Ferguson brings Jamie water but no keys, and Jamie's angry when Ferguson admits he didn't try to get the keys. Jamie's still dead set on his plan. He still wants to get out of there, and he doesn't see that Marsley would be alone. And at the whim of the crew, should the plot fail, Fergus says he's doing it for Jamie as well as Marsley, but naturally, Jamie doesn't see that Fergus is right, which I thought was interesting. You definitely do see the level of blindness that Jamie's in. He's just you can just see he's got tunnel vision. Like, he's so focused on saving Claire that he's not really looking at this from all angles. I mean, he's supposed to be Marsley's father here, which, we've seen that. We know that he technically is Marsley's father, and he's just completely just negating any sort of care for her. He doesn't seem to worry about her being in danger, which is understandable, but again, and I can understand why Jane would act this way. It just shows that Claire really is, Claire really is principal over everything else, and you see how paramount that really is to Jamie, how big of a situation this is for him, and he'll do anything he can to try to rescue her here. So the crew of the British ship notice that they're improving in the situation. Some of the crew on the upper deck actually start singing as one member starts to play the fiddle. Claire then walks through them, and many nod and smiles as she looks for Elias to return his rabbit's foot. And we get this really devastating scene where she finds him sick and in a hammock, and somehow she missed the signs that he was taken with the illness before it was too late. So he somehow developed it, and she just kind of didn't notice. So as we prepare him for burial, she returns the rabbit's foot. They finish sewing him into the shroud, and I was a bit disappointed by this. I kind of wanted to see more of Claire and Elias. I really liked their bond in this episode, and I wanted to see more of that, but I did think it was a well-done scene, the way that he did die there. So that evening, she's staying at the rails. The captain approaches her. Captain Laren explains that things are better and her efforts are heroic, and as the captain's walking away, Mrs. Johansson and other crewmen interrupt to say they've smelled land. Mrs. Johansson mentioned the grass for the goats again, and Claire now understands what she meant about the goats needing to feed. So Claire attempts to get away once they're all on land with the goats, but she's found by Captain Leonard. He reveals he knows she's trying to leave her to warn her husband. He cannot let her go and has her taken back to the ship. So Jamie's sitting in a cell looking at pictures of Bree and Claire when Captain Rains comes in, says that they're close to land. He mentions that he'll need everybody to help with the ship. So Jamie notices Marsley standing there. She informs Captain Rains that if he makes Jamie give his word, he won't rebel, and Jamie would not break his word. So Marsley tells the hard-headed man behind the bars that Fergus did what he did for his well-being, though he's too stubborn to see it. So Captain Rains lets Jamie out, gives Jamie a minute to speak with Fergus and Marsley alone, and Jamie finally, after 2 episodes, he does give his blessing here to let them get married by a priest in Jamaica, and he's then told, and it was a good scene. You could see that he really did see how much these two did love each other. The connection they had. He saw the determination. He saw that Fergus would do anything for Marsley. The fact that he stayed there for Marsley, I thought was really well done. So he's told to be on deck to help the rest of the crew manage the ship. That night, Claire and Miss Johansson hatch. They execute a new escape plan. Claire's going to jump off the ship and use a makeshift raft, and Miss Johansson made strapping a couple of her small barrels. Claire's scared and very much against it, but Miss Johansson gives Claire the money she has, helps with other provisions. They push the makeshift raft over. Claire jumps in behind to close out this week's episode, and basically Jamie was going to risk his life to save her, but Claire actually does risk her own to save him, and that is the way this episode ends. So, like I said, guys, I did think this was a bit of an improvement over the last episode, and that's mainly because this episode felt very focused. I mean, look, you know that Claire and Jamie are going to get back to each other. That obviously is going to happen. The show, it's trying to tell us otherwise, but you know these two are going to get back to each other. You know by the end of the season they're going to be, they're going to find young Ian. That's going to happen. But I do like the way the stakes are being presented. I do like how much, how the show is taking its time with this. I do think that is very well executed here. And I do like what this is really showing. It's showing this is kind of the way that Claire and Jamie get back to each other. And I'm thinking this is really what's going to reconnect them. I mean, needless to say, it's been kind of rough for Claire and Jamie. A lot really has changed, and they really do need to reform that connection. And you really do see that here. They kind of have to just restart their relationship as a whole, rebuild everything because a lot has changed. And I think this is going to be the thing that really does get them back together. So I can understand why they did this. And I did think this was a very good narrative for Jamie. It showed his determination to get to Claire. It shows how much he cares about Claire and how that is paramount to everything else, even when it comes to Marsley. As much as he does love Marsley, as much as he does care about her, Claire is what's most important, and you definitely do see that here. And I thought Fergus's stuff was particularly really well done. You really see the love he has for Marsley. You see how much he does care about her, how much he's willing to risk for her. And again, it's very similar to Jamie. You can tell that Jamie has raised him. You can tell that Jamie has brought him up right. He seems to care about Marsley just as much as Jamie cares about Claire. But again, I will reiterate, I don't care as much about this relation because we have not seen enough of it blossom. We saw more in this episode, but I just still don't have that much care in terms of this relationship just because it's been very rushed, and I think they really could have taken their time when it comes to Marsley and Fergus. I think we really could have seen more of that before we get into this whole plot line. Jamie and Claire was very gradual, and I know they got married in episode 7 of season 1, but it just felt very earned because the two were, spending most of the season getting to know each other and realizing their love for each other, and that really worked out. Here, you don't get that sense that these two have had a great relationship. It just feels kind of rushed, but César, Domboy, and Lauren Lyle are very much selling it. They're both really good actors, and I think they're both doing a really good job, so their acting really is selling what is kind of a rush story, but I think it definitely is well done. Claire's stuff in this episode, I loved. I loved her determination. I loved how much she wanted to save these sailors. I loved how much she, basically didn't let anyone get in her way. She very much took over everything, and I love seeing that. That is the Claire Fraser that we really do love. The Claire Fraser that it has just so much agency and is always in charge and doesn't let anyone get in her way. And she says this line to Elias where she tells him that she is not a calm woman and that she's not she is a dangerous woman. And I would very much agree. I mean, Claire doesn't let anyone get in her way. She's not someone who just listens to orders, and the captain very well knew that. She's not following orders. She's going to do what she knew, and I thought that was definitely very well done. I will admit, though, I did not think Elias needed to die in this episode. Now, I don't know if he does in the book, but to me, they had such a great connection, I really could have seen it for more than one episode. I thought the actor who played him was great. I love the bond that they were really forming, and I did think it was a bit of a loss to kill him off this early, but I did think this was overall a well-done episode. I did think there was a lot of good stuff going on here. This was definitely one of the better episodes in a while, and I am going to give Outlander Season 3, Episode 10, Heaven and Earth, a B+. So over, guys, from this episode of Outlander. Let us guys thought this episode overall. Love your thoughts on it. Like I said, I definitely did enjoy this episode quite a bit more than some of the other ones, but that's my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. We only have 3 episodes left this season, which is pretty crazy. But I will see you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.